Hi, welcome again to Business is Personal. I'm Dr. Corrie. I have a couple of amazing guests. I'm really excited to share them with you because you know how I love startups, you know how I love entrepreneurs. And these guys are coming at a totally different angle, and I love the problem that they're trying to solve, and I'll let them introduce that to you. But with me today is Alex and Usama, the co-founders of Qureos, and both of them are ex-Swivel. And so my first question to you guys is, okay, you're starting up a new company, which is great, okay? We're gonna talk about that experience. But why would you leave Swivel to do it just before it's going IPO?
That's a good question. Do you want to start, someone?
Yeah, for sure. For us, it's pretty simple, right? We went through the Swivel experience. It was an amazing learning experience.
Yeah.
We saw the company grow like 10x, at least in my time there. But I mean, when I see what Swivel has built and become, I see a lot more startups that can come out of this region. Some things that can essentially go global.
Right.
I really believe in what we are essentially building on, and there's no point waiting on an idea when you have one, right?
Right. Is it same for you, Alex?
Pretty much. First of all, thanks for having us here. And for me, it's more personal because when I look at success, personal or for business, it's not about time. It's not about if you want to pursue something. So Swivel has been the most amazing experience for me personally.
Yeah.
I grew as a person. I got the experience how to build something from 0 to 1.
Right.
And for me, it was just the right time to do something on my own and really drive impact globally.
Amazing. Tell us, what does Qureos actually do? What's the problem that you guys are solving?
All right. So first of all, Qureos was never supposed to be a startup. It was always a passion project.
So were you doing, was this your side hustle?
It was just a side hustle. We were mentors.
That's amazing. Okay, Garrett.
Back in the days, we were mentors at different schools and universities. We are a product of mentorship ourselves.
Right.
And as we were moving from one job to the other, we were mentors on the side, and that grew. So in order to make our side hustle easier for us, we created a basic website just to simplify things.
That's great.
Little do we know that that's going to be a startup. But the problem we found by doing this was that there is a skill gap in the transition from campus to the workplace.
Right.
And when we looked at why do we have this skill gap and what's the underlying problem, then we found that there's this huge youth unemployment globally. So we have 1.3 billion Gen Zs globally, out of which about 253 million every year are unemployed. This means graduates that are unemployed. So that's essentially the target audience that we want to build a platform for.
Right.
So what Qureos is essentially a platform that allows these graduates to really learn the employable skills very quickly and monetize those, and by working on projects on the platform, and such build a portfolio for themselves.
Right. So it fills that transition gap between education and workforce. Is that right? In the same way that an apprenticeship would?
But with the learning experience first. So you would build yourself up from an upskilling point of view, and then you apply that in an apprenticeship project, and you have a mentor around you at all the time.
Oh, that's great. No, it's
a group of mentors.
A group of mentors. Yes. No, it's even better. Look, I've got 2 teenage kids, right? Well, not teenagers anymore. My son's 21 and my daughter's 16, and both of them are in university. And so like I'm freaking out about their transition from university into the workforce. Like, I don't know, they must be absolutely scared to death. I remember what it was like for me too. It's just a totally different environment, and moving from one thing to the other, it feels like jumping off a cliff.
Absolutely.
So if you can give wings to that jump, I think that's probably what Qureos is.
Absolutely. And we have 2 fundamentals essentially. Number one is, if you look in sports, right? You start early, you become decent, and then you become really good. Right. Then you're going to end up with 5 different coaches, 6, 7, for every part of your body, technique, and diet. And
that's right.
You go to school then to learn a skill. You'll have this mass education. Right. So it hasn't changed. So what we are doing is applying that concept on education. Right. So not one to many, but rather many to one. So many mentors within a skill to one particular person.
Wow, that's amazing.
The second fundamental is that you should not have to learn something for 3, 4, 5 years to then monetize it. Right. You learn it quickly, bite size, and monetize it, and then iterate quickly through that process. And that's how you accelerate a career or a learning path.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that. What was your mentorship experience like when you were transitioning from school to work, each of you? Usama, what was it like for you?
So it was flip for both of us. He was a product of mentorship. Like on the contrary, I was not a product of mentorship. Right. So for me, it was always about working by myself, figuring things out, what could have been improved, and then reiterating myself.
Right.
So that was the lack of mentorship.
Right.
That I really want to build upon, that what I went through, so someone else doesn't. So
Right,
that
right.
is essentially why we're building Qureos from my side.
Right.
From his side, it's going to be completely different.
So for me, firstly, when I graduated, I was the person that was scratching my head. Where do I go? What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get a job. And I had a bachelor and a master.
Wow.
So I just took any job. So I became underemployed for 2 years. I worked within a segment that I hated. So I decided to quit that and do something for that I really want. So luckily, I got accepted to Cisco, a graduate program in Cisco. And that was amazing because I ended up in a graduate program in Amsterdam. A lot of mentors. And it's really thankfully due to 3 mentors that I am where I am. Even moving to Dubai was because of a particular mentor.
That's amazing.
So for me, mentorship has been
okay. Do it now because we don't do it very often. Give a shout out to one of your mentors.
Marcel Capetti, thank you so much for your support.
That's great. We don't give enough credit to those people that were mentoring us in those, and I had that too, right? I had leaders like Carl and Darcy that were feeding into me all the time. They didn't have to do that. One of the things that was really instilled in me during that transition time between education and work is that mentorship is a follower-led sport, right? There's not going to be a lot of really high caliber, high skill, high game players saying, hey, I need to grab a group of youth and help them up. It happens, right? But it's rare. More commonly is if you're an up and coming skill and you really want to, improve in a character trait or improve in a skill level or improve in your transition to work, you need to find people who already do what you want to do and either emulate them or chase them down and get that stuff. And I've got people that are pursuing me like that too, right? So I'm a mentor to people, but not because I'm pursuing them as a mentor. I'm a mentor to them because they're passionate about their own development enough to chase me down. And I respond in kind. I feel honored by that, and I feel like I should reciprocate by giving them what I can. So your platform, Qureos, it sounds to me like it's a really great ecosystem for encouraging that kind of relationship where it's student-driven. Is that right?
Correct. So just to take a step back, so Qureos essentially has 3 different type of personas. So the apprentice side of the learners, that is, the mentors, which is basically the core, and then we have the businesses.
Right.
And when we say that we want to create an ecosystem, we want to make sure that we create a platform where value is transferred between all. And it's not, okay, I need to learn a skill to get a job, and then you jump off the platform, and then you don't come back, because then we're not solving the problem.
Right.
The skill gap in the world. So we're looking at this, that it needs to be lifelong learning. So if I walk you through a journey, and you're an apprentice, and you could be of any age, right? You want to learn a skill today, you do that from another mentor, from your mentor on the platform, and then a month later you want to monetize that, you want to give back, then you become a mentor yourself.
Right.
Or you want to actually make a side hustle or a side gig out of this, so you start monetizing that skill with those skills, and working on projects. So you help startups and that ecosystem to grow, and you give your value to them. So you can transition between these personas throughout the journey as you progress and develop yourself.
That's really cool. So then it's not just school to work. No. It's also job to job, or even role to role within an organization. You can use that as
we have apprentices that are 40 years old as well. Like, with the skills that they learned back then are no more monetizable. So they want to upskill themselves.
Yes.
This sort of learning happens like lifelong, right?
Yeah.
You can't really stop that.
Well, that's the majority of my work as an executive coach too, is I have people that are in high level management that are moving into an executive level position. It's a different level of play. They've never played at that level. They've got the skills, but there's some culture things, there's some finance game, there's some HR game that they're not familiar with, and they want to upskill themselves before they get into this role that they're pretty much earmarked for. So I get a lot of those calls like, hey, I've got 3 months to prepare for the EVP role at this company or whatever. Can you help me? What do I need to know? And that becomes a large part of what I do. It probably would be helpful to have a platform where I could connect with people like that. So no, it's really cool. Really cool. So you talked about startups before, and that's really interesting to me because you're obviously in a startup, and I've done a few startups myself, and I always love asking entrepreneurs about their own personal journey. What's been really interesting? What are your learning points? What are your pivot points, your pain points? Tell us a little bit about your journey in the startup at Qureos, and what have been the three biggest things that you've learned, either positive or negative, about starting up now?
Awesome. So I'll take a few steps back. As I mentioned, Qureos was never supposed to be a startup. It was just a passion project.
Right.
So for us at that point in time, we were just trying to give back and make that small time that we had make useful meaning out of it. But as when we were mentors and we went to this, there's a moment in time when Qureos was born.
Right.
We went to James Wellington High School for Innovation Challenge, being judges, to find this group of students that had an amazing idea. So we helped them along the way. But that grew beyond them to a point where we could not manage our own time anymore.
Wow.
So we had to make it easier for ourselves. So we created our first website. That is when it was called Coachie back in the day.
Coachie.
Coachie.
That's hilarious. So you just had a website. You didn't actually have the app or the ecosystem. No. It was all just manual in the background?
It was all manual because at that point you just wanted to get as close as possible
to
the problem. So whenever you want to start something, you really need to solve a real problem.
That's right.
And that's a big problem. So we knew that we were solving something. We just didn't know what it was. And how big is the problem? Is there a market for it? And how does a scalable solution for this look like? In EdTech, it's really difficult to scale something, a solution. So that's when we needed to just answer these type of questions, and we luckily got accepted to Dubai Future Accelerator.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. And now we had access to the education landscape
across
Dubai.
Yeah,
we did a lot of experimentation, and we really got close to the problem.
Yeah.
So we didn't build anything. It was only fake it till you make it.
That's great, though. That's a winning formula, by the way. And entrepreneurs need to know that. There's a huge gap between MVP and POC, right? Absolutely. So you're race to the MVP and then pace to the POC, right? Once you get your minimum viable product, you can steer. And so it's one of the biggest piece of advice I give to entrepreneurs, because we're so afraid as entrepreneurs of taking the first or major step, right? Putting the money in, getting the trade license, whatever that is. And we're so afraid of ready, fire, aim. Right? We pull the trigger and then aim the gun, and that's too late. But that's not what entrepreneurship is. It's ready, accelerate, steer. Right? So you can get roughly in the right direction, put your foot on the gas and go, and then steer. And that's exactly what you've done. And I love that about the journey, is that you've got that pivot mentality. Like, okay, this isn't working. Let's go here. Let's go here. Let's go. And that's absolutely what you need as an entrepreneur. You need that flexibility to let go of a best practice that you thought you would need, and then grab onto a best practice that your customers or your stakeholders actually need.
Yeah, absolutely. And we usually call this fail fast, learn faster.
That is an amazing motto, because now with the speed of change, so many companies growing and coming down, growing and exiting, like the average lifespan of a company on the S&P 500 now is like 13 years. Like, it's not, the life cycle of companies is so fast. You have to be able to move quickly. And the cost of breaking things is way less than the cost of taking too long to move.
Absolutely agree. And you're bringing up an interesting point, because you're talking about the speed in the industries.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly the problem. And the reason why the problem that we're solving is happening, because the speed in the industry is happening so fast, but the speed in education is much, much slower. So you essentially see this gap just becoming longer and wider. Mm-hmm. How do you integrate these two? Because essentially one has to go from the campus to the workplace.
Right.
And that's essentially the
well, there's so much change in education, right? People are talking about like scrapping formal education altogether and going entirely on the job learning. And the education landscape, the academic landscape, is changing dramatically. And I think what is going to be required in terms of education is going to change. And I think the mentorship model has really great growth opportunity there.
Absolutely.
Do you see that as well?
Definitely. I mean, what really works is experiential learning, right? By no means am I saying that traditional learning will not exist. It has to. Learning by watching or listening definitely has to exist. But beyond that, what's beyond that? You need to apply those skills.
That's right.
You need to know how does this thing that I really learned in school get applied to real work experience. Otherwise, what I learned is really, really not going to help me anywhere.
Yeah.
That is where the help of a mentor and essentially understanding the curriculum, where your curriculum can now be applied in terms of on-job learning, essentially comes together. And that is where experiential learning essentially gives birth, and you go beyond what you actually learned in school.
That's fantastic.
If I just take a step up, kind of, then let's look at what has happened in the online education space over the last, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
We've essentially seen 4 waves. We've seen the MOOCs, massive online open content, which is the Coursera of the world.
Yes.
Then we've seen the marketplaces, which is kind of the Udemy of the world. We've seen the toolkits, which is Teachable, and all of these waves has been amazing. They coexist today. Yep. And now the latest one is the cohorts.
Right.
And cohorts is really what someone just mentioned, focusing on experiential, so learning by doing.
Yeah.
It's not heavy on content, so that means it's scalable.
Right.
By that fact alone, and you learn together. So the completion rate is actually high, because one of the biggest problem with MOOCs and learning from videos is completion rate.
Yeah.
It's below 10%.
Oh no, I have the same problem. Like I have my own online learning academy, which I started during lockdown in 2020. Because what are you going to do when you're stuck in the house for a month, right? So I was like, let's turn some of my materials into online courses. So I did that, and I've got great engagement on like most of my courses up until about the 20% mark, and then they tend to fall away, and I have to chase them down. If I chase them down, they finish, right? But if I don't have time to chase them down as a professor and let them know that there's a real person out there that's cheering for them, there's that level of engagement that you don't get at Coursera or Udemy that you would have to get from a mentor in order to make sure that you have that experiential learning, in order to make sure that the learning is not just theoretical but also applied. And I know the value of, I've done all of my postgraduate degrees while working full-time and building my own companies. So it was really cool doing an MBA while you're building your own company, because everything you read, you can apply the next day. You're like, oh man, how did I not do that 6 months ago? Like, oh, that's such a good idea. But then you can put it into practice the very next day, and then you can reap the bottom line benefits from it at the end of the quarter. And it's such a huge relief when you have that. If you're in a university environment, and I don't mean to slag the university environment, because I've done my own degrees as well, but there's so much time invested before you get to apply what you're learning. And I think that's one of the gaps that you guys fill with.
A lot of the times you realize what you learned in school was nothing as opposed to what you wanted to do in your life.
Right.
So if you had applied that a little earlier, you might have course corrected yourself.
Right. Or worse, you're in an industry where what you learned in year 1 is outdated by year 4.
Absolutely.
Right.
We actually have a few apprentices that have reached out to us, thanking us for dropping out of the program, and I was like, that wasn't the point. So please go back. But it was essentially career exploration.
Yeah.
What Usama mentioned, right? Where they actually were able to practice quickly that sort of career that they were supposed to do in 4 or 5 years from now, and say, no, it's not for me. So let me go for it.
So let me ask you on a more personal note, what is it that you want to learn this year? Okay, you're a learning environment. You must have learning goals of your own. Usama, what are you learning in this year?
Entrepreneurship, basically, to begin with. Like you mentioned earlier, creating an MVP and essentially working towards a POC. I think I'm MVP of an entrepreneur today.
Very good.
I want to essentially build myself as a much better.
Yeah.
But the learning is actually going to be on the way today. Every single day now that being a co-founder, we realize what our previous employers or co-founders were essentially thinking about day in, day out. And that would have been such a nightmare of a journey. Now, luckily, we have them as our mentors to essentially pull us across much faster. So hopefully this journey is going to be much better and even better for the people that come after us.
Amazing. And you, Alex?
I definitely agree with Usama, but on top of that, I would say trying to figure out how to build an awesome culture within Qureos. And the reason for that is because we are in the process of building up the team, building up the whole company from ground up. Right. And by doing that, we want to attract talent that has a passion for the cause, for the mission. And for us, our mission is to accelerate 100 million careers and build a learning ecosystem globally. So it's not that easy, or as easy as you might think when you're on the other side.
Yeah, sure.
But once you're doing it, is how do you actually achieve it? How do you get everybody to share the same passion? Right. So that's something that I'm looking forward to.
My learning goal this year is actually flow.
Okay.
Flow state. I've been practicing it since I was 26. I don't really have the academic vocabulary for it yet, so I'm reading everything that's ever written by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and everything that's ever been recorded on flow states to try to bring out the language that's necessary in order to help managers and leaders to manage their focus, and that's going to be the subject of my next book. So yeah, you should be a lifelong learner. You should have learning goals that are, at least yearly, if not every 6 months, have a learning goal. I try to collect some sort of formal learning at least every year. So that's great. I really appreciate it. And the platform is up and running already, or it is? Okay, so people can register.
Absolutely.
All right, the link will be at the bottom of the post here. So if you are yourself a mentor or you're a student and you want to plug into this brand new ecosystem for bridging the gap between theoretical and experiential learning, this is a great way to accelerate your career. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining me on Business is Personal today. I wish you absolutely all the best of luck with Qureos and with your new company, because starting a new company is like having a child. For the first 2 years, it's just tears and sleepless nights, and it's always trying to kill itself, and you're always trying to save it from death. So I'm hoping over the next 2 years of sleepless nights, it really pays off for you guys, and you end up with a growing economic child that is able to stand on its own, and you can leave it alone for a week and it won't kill itself, That's what we're looking forward to as entrepreneurs, is that time when it's stable enough that we can help it run and grow. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys can do. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Thank you. And thank you for joining me as well. I'll see you next time on Business is Personal. Cheers.